everybody. It's Cockpits and Cocktails, and it is Fly Alyssa and Natalie flyGIRL Kelley. We are here today with an extra special guest. We have Jessica Cox, and we are so excited to hear your story.
Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Glad to be on and just to be a part of this conversation and wherever it will lead us.
Yeah, I'm so excited. When I found out that, you could be a podcast guest of ours, I was just thrilled because I've read many articles about you and know a little bit about you and some of the challenges you've faced. And I just think you have such a great story that people need to hear.
Yes, obviously being in it in my own life, I don't think of it in that kind of way. But when I hear these stories of many people who gain inspiration from hearing that I became the world's first armless pilot, always lightens up my day. And it really helps me give purpose and reason for really getting the word out there, getting the story out there. Because I think we all are human in the sense that we all have fears and we all have challenges. And while my challenges are pretty obvious, I don't have two arms. Most people have their arms, but I've learned to overcome those and still become a pilot. Then it helps give others encouragement that no matter what their challenges are, they could still fight to persevere and overcome the challenges that they have in their life to pursue aviation or whatever it is that they hope to pursue.
That's amazing. I honestly, I believe I saw you were on a trip maybe last year sometime, and you were doing kind of like a tour or something. And I kind of started taking notice of you, and I was like, wow, if she can do this, like anybody, this is just amazing. And then come to find out, we have a mutual friend. We have Phil Howell, which is a mutual friend. And
Yes.
He got his haircut last week. We were talking about it. And, it sounds like your family really encouraged you from a very young age to just pursue anything that you set your mind out to do. I mean, where did aviation come from? How did this begin, or like how did you think like, oh, I can fly an airplane?
So I'd never been exposed to aviation my entire life. I'd never been in a small plane. I'd been on commercial flights, but never in a small plane. And all of a sudden, one day I was speaking to a group shortly after I graduated from college. And this group was a group that serves the community. And a gentleman came up to me and he said, "How would you like to fly in an airplane?" And I immediately wasn't as excited about the idea, but my dad was right beside me and he said, "She would love to." I was always afraid of flying, meaning the moment the moment you lose contact with the ground was terrifying to me. So I wasn't as excited about it, but I found out more about this organization, and they told me I needed to write a paper about aviation and disability. So I wrote about some aviators who also had disabilities. And once I was done with the paper, I had earned my flight, and that was all set up. But just before that, I ended up getting invited to speak for an international group called the Flying Samaritans. And that group said, "We're going to take you to Mexico for our international conference." And I thought, okay, well, I'll probably just hop in a car, or because I'm being in Tucson, Arizona, it's not too far from Mexico, or I'd get on a commercial flight. But they were going to take me in a small airplane. So it turned out that was my first flight in the single engine airplane.
As an international flight to Mexico. Were you in like a Cessna 172 or what were you
It
in?
was a Cessna 172, yes.
Yeah. Were you scared?
I was a little hesitant. I know I said my prayers before takeoff.
Yeah.
But then the moment we were airborne, I was like, we're airborne now. So it was like I could finally just take a breath. But leading up to that point, I was pretty scared and not so sure about it.
How old were you? You said you were just out of college. So you were like 19, 18, or no, out of college. So probably like 20.
22,
Yeah,
23.
I was 21, I think, to be
Okay.
exact. 21,
Okay.
just senior year of college, just graduated, ready for the next chapter of my life. And this opportunity came about right at the right time. Because at that moment, after that first flight, I was like, I want to do whatever it takes to become a pilot.
Wow. So
Yeah,
what did you major in college?
So I had a totally non-aviation related degree. I got a degree in psychology, a
Wow.
Bachelor of Science in Psychology. and it ended up working well as for my career as a speaker.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously being in college taught me how to study, because you have a lot of studying when you have to do the ground school. So I
Right.
learned how to be a better at studying and learning from the books.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did your family say when you came back from this trip and you're like, oh, guess what? I want to be a pilot.
Well, I not everyone was I should say not everyone was completely shocked, because it was very much like me and my personality and the
Mhm.
things that I do. I mean, I'd previously earned a black belt in Taekwondo. I had done things that most people didn't do or just didn't really want to do. So for some of my family, they weren't very shocked. For others, they were like, "Are you sure you really want to do this?"
Yeah.
So they were hesitant for me, but I think they know that once I get focused on something, I'm just like I will do what it takes to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
So once you decided that, aviation was for you, you wanted to become a pilot, what were some of the things, like, obviously, being an armless pilot, there were some obstacles that you had to overcome. How did you go about that? Did you find an instructor first, or did you kind of do research of like what aircraft might be fitting, or how did that transpire?
They kind of happened together, because it was a combination of what plane is going to work for me. Because being in that Cessna for those first couple hours of training, it was obvious it wasn't going to work, because of the fact that there are rudder pedals, there's the yoke and the throttle, and all those things that are going on during final are going to be really hard for me to do with two less limbs. So I was informed about a special airplane that was built in the 40s, and
Hmm.
this airplane was called the Ercoupe. And the Ercoupe was special in the sense that people who lost their legs or who were paralyzed on one side could independently fly this plane. And so we thought, this is the next step, finding the Ercoupe. And that's when I started to seek out different places that could potentially have this vintage airplane. And it wasn't very easy at the beginning, because it's kind of a rare find. And then all of a sudden, on the AOPA magazine front cover of, I think it was March of 2008, sorry, March of 2005, was literally, I'm sorry, it was 2006. It was a story about an Ercoupe. It
Hmm.
was the cover story, and I was like, well, that's the plane. That's going to be the plane that I'm going to train in. And I call up the editor of AOPA, and within like a day or two, I was in touch with the owner of that airplane. And I said,
Wow.
I was wondering if I could potentially train in your Ercoupe because of my situation. And I didn't tell him I didn't have arms in the beginning. I just told him a little bit more about what I was doing. I graduated college. I had a black belt in Taekwondo, and I was telling him all this stuff. And then I said, "Oh yeah, and I don't have arms." So he, at that moment, probably was shocked, but I don't know how he took it, because it was on the phone, of course. But then he said, "Yeah, let's come on out, let's train." And
That's
as you know,
Wow.
that's really classic of the aviation community.
Mm.
It's so encouraging, and that's what I always want to reassure people out there who want to pursue it, that this is an amazing community of people that will help you.
Yeah. So true.
really,
So
I
was
don't.
that located near you? I mean, did you go there and like had this condensed, like accelerated program with them, or how did that work? How long did it take you?
It was across the country.
Wow.
So I was going to have
Not
to
convenient.
travel to Florida from Arizona.
Yeah.
But I was willing to do what it takes, because I knew how rare this Ercoupe, or the Ercoupe, was. And so I made my way across the country to Glenn Davis's Ercoupe for the
Mhm.
first part of the training in the Ercoupe.
And he
Wow.
was CFI.
He was a CFI, coincidentally, a CFI, and so he had the experience. It wasn't just someone who had one, but he had that experience to start off my training.
That's amazing. That's really cool.
That is. I've
It
heard a lot of
was.
good things about that airplane, actually. Did you fall in love with the airplane?
I did. And I'm falling more in love with this little airplane now that I've owned one for 2 years,
Hmm.
because of these little special things, the nuances that you don't even realize until you know the plane and how it functions. and know that there was so much thought into the design of this airplane.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I think I saw the first Ercoupe. There's one about 40 minutes locally from me. And I started talking to the guy because I was like, what is this? And he's like, doesn't have rudder pedals. And I was like, what? Like, I've never gotten to fly one, but I hear that there is a big event out by you guys every year that was it in the spring? You guys have like a big Ercoupe fly-in kind of thing?
We have multiple Ercoupe fly-ins. We
Okay.
just had one last fall. It was in Arizona, so that was in Tucson, in my hometown. But if you find out, you can find out more about this community. There's the Ercoupe Owners Club. You can join that, which we just joined, meaning my husband and I just joined that club. There is a whole community of mechanics who know the whole Ercoupe, and that's on Facebook. Or you could join just the Facebook Owners Club as well on Facebook.
So you
Cool.
guys have
I'm sorry, the Ercoupe Owners organization, they have a page as well.
Okay.
you guys have like your own what do they call that? Like a cult following?
Yeah, basically, it does have its own following. It's great. It's crazy how many. It's a wonderful community of supporters.
Yeah. Now, does your husband fly? Because you mentioned him, and does he know how to fly?
He actually just became a pilot in January of this year. So
Oh,
he
wow.
is a pilot. And what's
That's cool.
shocking about it is, as a pilot and just a new pilot, he took the trek from Tucson, Arizona, all the way to Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and back, 4,000 miles round trip, with the
Wow.
help of one other person, but he did most of the flying.
Wow.
And he survived as literally a new pilot.
That's
What a
awesome.
great experience.
It was an adventure. We literally just ended it yesterday.
Yeah.
It was
That's
one thing
pretty
after
exhausting.
another.
Now,
It was.
what did you fly into Oshkosh? I knew you were there, and I knew there was another girl there with you when I met you, and
Yes.
a dog. And I was like,
Yes.
well, did they fly the Ercoupe with the dog? Like, that's not possible. And so, like, all those things were going through my brain, but I didn't want to ask.
Yeah, that other a young woman who was with me, she's the other person who volunteered to help with the Ercoupe because she's a CFI. She is the secretary of the Women Aviation International chapter of Phoenix. So Lindsay Lakaitis, she was so generous of her time to help us get the plane. And it took us 2 weeks to the day of departure that we finally
Wow.
made it into the state of Wisconsin. And then another 2 weeks back. So it took us a month and 2 days
My
to
goodness.
take that Ercoupe because challenges kept popping up along the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Well, it's those challenges that teach you, which,
Yes.
sometimes
True.
they're frustrating and you don't anticipate them, but those are the things that you usually learn the most from.
Yes, I have learned. You are so right. It's when you have the challenges or the issues with your plane, they're like, oh, so that's how that works.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now it makes sense. It's like, oh, okay. Now I get it.
As
Mhm.
pilots, I feel like it teaches us patience and, just problem solving a lot of times. And so I think it's
Yeah.
definitely made me like a thinker and like thinking ahead of the airplane. And
Yes.
just there's so much to it that you don't think until you're a pilot, like that you really have to figure out. And sometimes I'm in the airplane and I'm like, am I good to fly this airplane right now? Like, is this for real? Like something do I need to be managing something or yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think it also teaches you can't control everything,
Right.
and things happen, and you've got to learn to go with the flow and just accept it and, readjust and keep going.
That's true. You just kind of move through it and you're right. That whole the control part that we all want to have,
Right.
you kind of just have to be flexible and learn how to adapt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was reading a little bit about, I didn't really think about it until I read this, that, it's probably really exhausting for you to fly the Ercoupe just with the way you have to fly the airplane. And it talked a little bit about creating a airplane that was better suited for you. Is that something you want to talk about a little bit?
Sure. You are the first podcast to have that story. So congratulations. We are talking this after the fact of AirVenture 2021, where we launched this wonderful endeavor called Project 2025. And we are on a goal and on a mission to design an RV-10 so it can be flown with feet in the PIC seat, the left seat, keeping the right seat the same, but modifying a kit airplane from the ground up to make this work.
Wow, that's so cool.
That is really awesome. And I think that's something that, like, you know, in aviation, like, there aren't a lot of airplanes that are specific for disabilities and those types of things. And I think that might be kind of that starter of the aircraft that you can mold to fit your needs. And it being experimental, I think, is huge.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for recognizing that, because that's what the hope is to be able to open people's eyes to thinking bigger and thinking about how can we make planes more accommodating, and it's really a great conversation to have so we can be more inclusive and leave the opportunity of aviation open for people with disabilities.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there a reason you picked the RV-10 out of everything? Like, what was it about that you?
So the RV-10 is very versatile in the sense that we, first of all, we had a tremendous amount of support from Vans. And I mean, Vans is what the #1 kit airplane manufacturer. So they responded so tremendously, encouragingly to our endeavor. And we sat down with all of them and we talked to them about this. And so that was very helpful to know that they were interested in helping us out. And we are very grateful for that. We are still in the process of raising the funds because it's going to cost about $300,000 to do this project, which is, you know, typical of aviation.
Absolutely. And you know, airplanes can be very, very affordable, but people also don't realize, like, the STOL airplanes, you know, showing my dad, you know, my dad's like, what are those airplanes? Like $330,000. And I was like,
yeah, right.
I'm like, some of those airplanes are probably $1 million just with all of the money they have in them, you know? So, I mean, they could be, but it's just kind of, you know, aviation is that way, and making something specific, you know, for you, I think is, you know, going to be really awesome. And, you know,
do you have a team that's going to help you with this building the airplane? How's all that going to work?
This is all very new to us, the RV-10 build. We do envision a team because the more people we can get inspired by this project, I think it will be better received, not only globally, but just I feel it would be wonderful to involve other people with disabilities, potentially involve young people who are inspired by aviation. And even if that means maybe going to a build a plane program and having a part of the plane contributed by a group like that of young people who are learning about aviation. We're not sure yet because it's all kind of very new, but we hope to make it a large, you know, project by a big team. So if flyGIRL wants to be a part of it in any capacity, we would love that support.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in that.
Heck, I just love to be a fly on the wall and get to see everybody interacting and building, and I'm fascinated by all of it.
Yeah. Well, Vans, have they been, you mentioned that they have, you know, it's going to be a Vans RV-10, and was it their idea to use this plane, or did you choose them and then reach out to them to see, okay, this is something we want to do. Do you think you can help?
So we discussed what airplane and we did some research, and that's what brought us to the conclusion about RV-10. And that's when we went to them, and they were so incredibly supportive. So it kind of affirmed that we wanted to really work with them on this. So it did come from a starting place of Patrick and I discussing it, and other people who are big fans of the RV encouraging that as well.
Is Patrick really good at building things?
Yes,
Give a knack
fortunately,
for
he is
that.
good at
He's in the
building
room, so
things.
we can't say
Yeah,
it.
I know.
He is in the room, and he is luckily good at building things. That's a very
Yeah.
appropriate question because it's going to take a lot of hours. I mean, for those who are not familiar with kits, it takes 2,000 hours to build a standard kit. And if you think about it, in addition to custom controls, it's going to be an endeavor.
And I think somebody had told me one time that, you know, if it says that it's a 2,000 hour build, you can pretty much double that. Because if you really think about it, like think of you and your husband trying to build a furniture piece for your house. And what you think is going to take an hour ends up taking 4 hours and an argument later, you know, of how it really goes together. And, you know, pulling out the documents every time. And, you know, I hear that Vans is actually a really easy build as far as, you know, the construction and how they've laid everything out, as opposed to other companies. But I just think it's got to be so time consuming. I mean, if you put yourself on the clock the minute you walk in the shop every single time, it's going to take way more than 2,000 hours, you know.
That's true. I never thought of it like that, but you know, that is
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah. You just got to enjoy the journey, right? And
Yeah.
all the people it sounds like it's going to bring together. What is your hope after? Okay, so let's say the airplane is built. Do you have plans for what you want to use the airplane for? Is it for personal travel? Is it to go out and share your story? What will you primarily use this new cool airplane for?
Well, that is definitely the big why question because I mean, obviously with this type of project and how big of a project it's going to be, like Alyssa was saying, is that, you know, what is it that's going to get us out and moving every single month towards, you know, working our way through this build and making it a possibility? Well, we are focused in on what it's going to allow us to do, and that is to continue to share the message that disability doesn't mean inability. You know, this is a major undertaking, and it's always to understand why it's going to help us move forward and continue on a project that's going to take a couple years. And we're really focused in on how this can reach so many more people with disabilities. And take, for example, it took us a month to get from Tucson to Wisconsin and back. And on the way, we stopped at a camp for children with disabilities. These were children who were born without limbs. And they come together every summer for sports. And we stopped in and we landed at a close by airport and we invited them to the airport. And for many of them, it was the first time they've ever seen a plane.
That's
And
so cool.
yes. And so these kids, they were wide-eyed and excited, and I invited them to even sit in the plane.
Yeah.
And so
And they probably never
planting that
really
seed.
thought that would be a possibility for them. And you're showing them and introducing
Yes.
them to this whole new idea of what they can do.
Yeah, and can you imagine? I mean, these kids are probably told countlessly
Yeah.
that they can't do it, you don't have a leg, you can't do this, or you know, you're missing a hand, and all this negative stuff. And then finally have someone just show them that
Mm-hmm.
the sky is the limit, or the sky is not the limit. And to do that, I think that's what we want to continue to do. And with the airplane, it's going to be more feasible to do that because it can get places faster. I mean,
Yeah.
RV-10 cruises at 200 miles per hour.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do a lot more of that versus taking an entire month out of our life to
Yeah.
visit essentially 2 camps for people with disabilities and then have all the challenges of a vintage airplane along the way
Right.
and cruising at 90 miles per hour. So
Yeah.
we're going to be able to reach more kids, more people with disabilities.
Yeah.
Super cool because honestly, like you can go, and I believe that you're a motivational speaker and you're going out in the world and speaking, but to be able to fly an airplane in and have them come to the airport and physically see that you indeed flew in on this airplane and you did it, like how amazing is that to be able to show them? Because for so many, like you know, you can tell kids a million times they can do anything they want, but to show them what you've overcome and they're no different is just, I think that's going to be awesome for you guys. I cannot wait to see what you do with the plane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, we're excited.
I do think, I mean, even for, just anyone, when you say, hey, I fly, then I feel like they, when I take people flying, they're always surprised by how many airports there are. And
Yeah.
it's like this whole new, it's like when you actually see what we fly, they probably envision like a jet in this like really glamorous, posh, and they're airplane, and they're usually like from the 1960s, and they're very,
yeah, and then they see our banged up doors, and
it's like, this is what I flew to get here, and they're like, oh, okay, well, that doesn't seem like that quite, it's just a very basic airplane, like, oh, it just has like
it's accessible.
Yeah. It seems very real.
Yeah.
So what do you do, Jessica? What is your main career right now? Do you go around, you do motivational talks? Is that your main job?
Yes. So my main career is speaking and the profession of speaking. That's where I am right now. I'm about ready to do a speech tomorrow for a big conference here in Phoenix, Arizona. And that's why I'm in this hotel. So Patrick and I, my husband and I, travel as a team all over the country, all over the world, 27 countries thus far, to do this work of speaking. And the aviation has sparked so much interest globally that's why it's becoming this amazing tool for us, using the inspiration of aviation, using the stories of aviation and what people perceive as, the impossible when it comes to flying a plane without arms, and using that to propel this career forward. And it has now for 15 years.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it hasn't been 15. I've only been a pilot since 2008. So we're going on, not quite 15 years, but I've been speaking for 15 years.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing? I always love to hear people's journeys, because I'm sure, 16 years ago, you really had no idea or whatever how this was all going to pan out, what you were going to be doing. Like, you probably would have never guessed you're going to be doing what you're doing right now, when you got your psychology degree, and how that's kind of helped you be who you are today, and be able to go around and do all these talks and understand, people's psyches and what they're thinking about this whole process of becoming a pilot. If you have some kind of disability, I mean, it just made you like the perfect person to do this.
It's been wonderful how it all kind of comes together, and it's especially wonderful when the perception of disability, like say abroad in other countries, is so negative, and how we can use it as a positive.
Yeah. Is it very different outside of the United States? How people
it's very different. For one, aviation and flying is not accessible in other countries around the world.
Little snippet, it's like, when I meet people in other countries that fly, they know every single person in the country that flies. We think that aviation is so small in the United States, but you go there and every pilot knows everybody because it's so small. And it was just so crazy to me that they think we have this like luxurious like world of flying. We do, but I never thought of it as that until I experienced, another country. So
yes,
but a lot of countries are using that accessibility, like airplanes, go to villages to bring medical supplies. And so if we can make that accessible to more places, I think that's, really going to be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you like to see beyond, let's say 10 years from now? What are you thinking you're going to be doing? What do you hope?
Well, 10 years from now, that's kind of hard to think about because, wow, but I mean, if I look back 10 years and think about how aviation has taken us around the world, it's pretty phenomenal. So going forward 10 years, I think I'm going to hope to continue to do the same thing, because the realities for people with disabilities are unfortunate around the world. And I think that if we can continue to do this, there's really no telling what we can do in another 10 years.
Yeah. I'm sure you hear a lot of great personal stories, and people reach out to you about what an impact you've made on their lives, and given them these dreams that they probably didn't really think was possible.
Yeah, it's wonderful because it's been now, some time. So I've been able to actually hear back from people who may have initially heard my story, 10 years ago. And so I'm like, wow, really? That helped you become a helicopter pilot, or that helped you overcome that, even though you were maybe hesitant? It's so rewarding to get those stories sprinkled into my AirVenture experience every summer.
Yeah. How do people typically find someone without limbs or disability, find an instructor? Is it really hard to find someone that is able and capable of training?
I think access to instructors are not as difficult. I just got an email this afternoon from a gentleman who is legally blind, and he didn't get the most encouraging information when he wanted to pursue flying. He wanted to become literally the first legally blind pilot. He has some vision, so he's not he has some peripheral vision. So, but anyway, he wasn't as encouraged. So I think access to instructors is not so much an issue, but shifting the way that we see instruction I think would be wonderful, to be able to think of, learning in different ways, and being open to thinking outside the box.
Absolutely. I think I had heard a story of a deaf pilot. My aunt was deaf, so I was in that community. There's a huge community where we are, and it's kind of made me think, I never really had considered getting my flight instructor's license, just because I'm I don't know that I'd use it. It stresses me out. I don't know. But then I hear these stories of people with disabilities, or, that are deaf, or, maybe legally blind. And if they just had somebody that was willing to work with them or understand their disability to be able to help them, I think it would just change that whole mindset of, you can't do this because you're deaf, or you can't do this because of this, and I think changing that mindset in our instructors or in the community is all it's going to take. So.
I love it. That's exactly right. It's sometimes this being open to seeing things from a different perspective. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, so people are listening or watching and they really want to get involved. How can they find out what they could do?
For anyone who is watching and wants to get involved with Project 2025, you can go to jessicacox.com/project2025 and find out more about this and how you could help. We need a lot of financial support. We need ideas right now for how we can make these custom controls. So we're obviously starting to pull together a team. So if you want people and groups and organizations like flyGIRL to be involved, we would love to obviously put that all on the airplane eventually when it's finished. Put a nice logo on. And so please do continue to follow us on our social media channels, which on Facebook is JCMS Official. So it's JCMS, like Jessica Cox Motivational Services Official. And we have Instagram as well. It's Right Footed. But mostly it's jessicacox.com/project2025.
Okay.
That's awesome. I look forward to seeing everything that's going on and hearing news. And I will definitely get all of those links up for everybody, and hope that we can help you out in whatever way possible, because I cannot wait to see this aircraft.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're a very motivating, inspiring person, and I wish you all the best. I know Alyssa does as well. And anything we can do to help and share your message or or anything, then please let us know. And I know it's going to happen, and it's going to be amazing. And hopefully I'll get to meet you maybe at AirVenture next year or a year after or sometime.
Great. Yes. Let's meet sometime.
Yeah.
I'll see you around. See you both around the aviation community.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for
You're welcome.
joining us. And it was great to meet you, I guess, on Skype. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you to everyone who listened to this episode of Cockpits and Cocktails. Please make sure that you support Jessica and visit her website and see all the things that you can do and be a part of this really cool adventure and project that she's got going on.
Thank you.
And cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.